you. Good evening, good evening to you. You, good evening to you. Good evening, and welcome. Thank you for joining. This is Daring Dialogues. I'm your host tonight, Shante Charles. I hope that you've been having a great and wonderful day. There is so much going on, and so much happening in these day and times. And I just think that sometimes we just need to take a pause. We need to have some breathing moments, some reflective moments, right? All throughout our day, if possible. I know that this is a long day for me. I started out around about 8 o'clock. And after I get off here tonight, I have one more class to teach. And then I will be sort of doing my downtime after 8 o'clock. So tonight we are only going to be reading about what was the Harlem Renaissance. So I know that I can make time in between this teaching and my class on tonight. So I hope everybody is doing well. We know that there is lots of stuff happening in the world and in the news, but in all things, make sure that you're checking in with yourself, that you know what's happening inside of you and with your body, soul, and spirit. Because the way this world is shaping up, we can be so inundated with what's happening externally that we stop checking for what's happening internally. So this is your reminder, if you haven't gotten one today, to check in with yourself, to do that introspection for yourself, to make sure you're good, body, mind, and spirit. So again, we are finishing up what was the Harlem Renaissance. And then tomorrow we'll be jumping back into the other reads that we have been looking at along with the inventor's work. We are on the chapter entitled The End and After. The End and After. The Great Depression signaled the beginning of the end for the Harlem Renaissance. Langston Hughes said, "We were no longer in vogue anyway, we Negroes. Colored actors began to go hungry, publishers politely rejected new manuscripts, and patrons found other uses for their money. Magazines like The Crisis and Opportunity stopped giving out cash prizes to writers. The WPA provided work for some for a few years, but most Black writers and artists of the day lived hand to mouth. As time passed, popular interest in Black culture began to fade. Struggling Americans were more concerned with money than with art. Hughes said, quote, "The ordinary Negroes hadn't heard of the Negro Renaissance, and if they had, it hadn't raised their wages any. Even Allen Locke realized the new Negro movement should have addressed itself more to the people themselves." Black people kept arriving from the South looking for work, but jobs were scarce during the Great Depression. It was lack of work that struck the final blow to the Harlem Renaissance in March 1935 in the form of a riot. Many Harlem businesses had remained white-owned. They made their money from Black customers, but refused to hire Black employees. Not much has changed, right? The community had peacefully protested this unfair treatment. Tensions were still high when a 16-year-old Black Puerto Rican boy was accused of stealing from a store. After his arrest, a false rumor spread that the boy had been killed. That led to a riot. The poet Claude McKay later called it the gesture of despair of a bewildered, baffled, and disillusioned people. By the time it was over, more than 100 people were in jail, 30 people were at the hospital and 3 were dead. The Harlem Renaissance was born from the hope that art could help gain equality for African Americans. The riot seemed to prove that its efforts had failed to change the lives of everyday people. The neighborhood fell on hard times that would last many years. But all was not lost. After all, a renaissance is a rebirth. Now, do we think it just coincidental that at the height of all of this black brilliance and excellence being shown, at the height of that, that all of a sudden the American economy would go into a depression, forcing people out of jobs, out of the arts, out of creativity, out of having time to think and plan and dream and imagine? Something for you to think about. The Harlem Renaissance gave birth to the new Negro. That spirit lived on in the works of future Black writers such as James Baldwin and Lorraine Hansberry, who in turn influence writers today. And each new generation of writers has claimed a wider audience among Americans of all races. Many in the Harlem Renaissance went on to join the civil rights movements of the 1950s and 60s. Louis Armstrong donated money to the cause and spoke out against segregation in schools. One of the organizers of the famous March on Washington, D.C. in 1963 was the Messenger magazine editor, A. Philip Randolph. Josephine Baker shared the stage with Martin Luther King that day. She spoke briefly, saying, "I have walked into the palaces of kings and queens and into the houses of presidents, but I could not walk into a hotel in America and get a cup of coffee." Toward the end of the march, Dr. King delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. King was a fan of Langston Hughes's poetry. Some people believed his speech was inspired in part by Hughes's line, "What happens to a dream deferred?" In his speech, King talked about his dream for equality. He said that he was personally the victim of deferred dreams, but he still believed his dream could come true. Music also outlived the Harlem Renaissance. Jazz continues to influence modern music, including hip hop. One musician said hip hop is like one of the children of jazz. Another musician called both types of music a link to the reality of Black folks and Black youth in particular. The art of the Harlem Renaissance also inspired new generations of African American visual artists. Augusta Savage's student Jacob Lawrence and 306 group member Romare Bearden went on to great fame as part of the second wave of Harlem artists. Their Renaissance origins are powerfully reflected in their work. During the Harlem Renaissance, it was illegal for people who were attracted to people of their same sex to live openly in America. But this did not stop such artists as Langston Hughes, Alan Locke, and Countee Cullen from including those experiences in their own work. They are now celebrated for presenting a little seen part of Black life in America. In the first quarter of the 21st century, Harlem itself began experiencing another rebirth. More people of all races have moved to the area. A vibrant new culture is bringing the famous neighborhood and its history back to life. The Harlem Renaissance set out to celebrate African American culture. In that, it succeeded. Even so, African Americans and other people of color still struggle for equality in society and in the creative arts. The movie industry has come under fire for its lack of diversity. The same is true in the visual arts and the book world. But efforts are being made to improve representation, and African Americans continue to make beautiful art despite the challenges we face. That determined creativity is perhaps the greatest legacy of Harlem Renaissance. All right, I want to show you the images, and then I will open it up for some conversation tonight. So these are some of the images in the back here. This is blues singer Bessie Smith. As I said before, these are some wonderful photographs of the time. Some of these are in the Life Picture Collection in Getty Images. This is the sculptor Augusta Savage. Now, also during this time was the sculptor Edmonia Lewis, who recently just got a postage stamp. You have the poet Langston Hughes holding on to an African statue at the time. And this is a series of pictures. This is Josephine Baker, painter Aaron Douglas of the time, and photographer James Vanderzee. Not to be forgotten, dancer Bill Bojangles Robinson, and Metavox Warwick Fuller's one of her most famous sculptures entitled Emancipation. Author Zora Neale Hurston, jazz musician Louis Armstrong, and pianist Duke Ellington. An image of the famous Apollo Theater on 125th Street in Harlem. You see the people moving through. So much more busier and crowded these days. And also, I really love this image. The members of the Harlem Hellfighters who fought in France and earned some of the highest war medals awarded in France. The sheet music cover for Noble Sissel and Eubie Blake's play on Broadway, Shuffle Along, an image of the Cotton Club and writer and political activist W.E.B. Du Bois at the Crisis headquarters. Oh, to bring back a writer's room where it's all black. Musician Cab Calloway, Broadway actress Ethel Waters in the play Cabin in the Sky, and Paul Robeson as Othello. So there's Cab Calloway. I love how this photograph captures his energy and joy and passion for what he's involved in. And I think we're coming to the last image here. Writer, editor, and critic Jesse Redmond Fawcett. All right. So that concludes the reading about the Harlem Renaissance. I want to take some time now. So if you would like to share your thoughts about how the Harlem Renaissance period ended, and any other insights you would like to offer, you can go ahead and click on the camera and I will bring you in for discussion tonight. If you are listening by Anchor, I want to thank you for your time and attention. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host tonight, Shantae Charles. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so continue to be light. Good evening.
Good evening. I am fortunate to be at an age where most of the people you talked about tonight, I saw them, not in person, but on television.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Cab Calloway, the way he would sing and dance a little bit. The man, he was full of energy. He was always full of energy.
You can tell, too.
Yeah, with his hair flopping, he was always full of energy. Duke Ellington, he was the man back then. That piano player, he was the man. If you played with Duke Ellington, hey, you were right up there.
Ain't no stopping you now, huh?
Oh, I ain't no that exactly. Ain't no stopping me now. And I remember them. And but the one that keeps standing out and coming back was Mr. Bojangles.
Okay.
We talked about him. Was that last night we talked about him?
Mm-hmm.
Or the night before? I'm telling you, man, that man, if you ever get a chance to really see, he did some dancing with Shirley Temple, but if you ever get a chance to really see a film of him dancing by himself.
I think I'm definitely looking up some of these people now just so I can watch film of them. So yeah, he's one definitely I have on my list to watch.
And then, because in the song Mr. Bojangles, I don't know all the words. I just know the chorus part.
Mm-hmm.
But I know some of the words speaking about him jumping so high and clicking his heels. And that was one of his trademark moves.
Okay.
That was one of his trademark moves. And you see people do that now, how they'll jump and turn their legs to the side and click their heels.
I used to do that. I don't think I can get up there right now.
Yeah, that was him. He started that.
Okay.
And but yeah, man. Listen, our people are innovators.
I just found it very interesting, and I had noted this before when I was teaching on this time period. I just found it very interesting that at the height of all of this brilliance, all of a sudden the United States crashes its economy.
Yeah, of
and
course.
To me, I feel like anytime we make some sort of progress, somebody comes along and crashes the economy so that progress can be lost. Maybe it's just me. Maybe we'll have an economist come on and share some insights and talk to us about cycles of economy or something. But to me, a lot of that is tied to how much we don't want African Americans in this country to progress economically, financially, to gain our footing in a way that would build consistent generational wealth, because there are pockets of Black generational wealth in this country, but it's like at 0.000000001%.
And see, like I tell people, especially when our counterparts, when they start talking about, "Oh, you want stuff for free," I tell them, "Listen, as far as I'm concerned, you don't have to give us nothing. Just leave us alone."
I don't. Yeah, I hear you.
That we can start your help.
You're going in and out right now.
Just don't hinder.
Your sound is going in and out, Pastor.
Okay. I don't know. Let me turn a little bit.
You were buffering some, and we couldn't hear what you were saying.
Okay. What? Am I okay now?
Yes. The last thing we heard was just leave us alone.
Just get out of our way and let us do what we do. See, and if you really want to help us, if you really want to help us, give us our inventions, and y'all just leave that alone too.
Well,
we'll see who did what. Okay, we'll see who's responsible. We'll see who did nothing and who did the work.
I wouldn't even say give us our inventions. I would just say give us the residual income from all of those inventions.
Right. Yes, that. Oh,
just hand that over.
Yeah.
But no,
just hand that over.
That would probably crash the economy.
Yeah.
Think about all the things that are involved in the technology world that wouldn't even be possible without the Black inventors that were putting the systems together through which all these other things run on.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I find irony in that, because here Black people created the systems that all of these platforms run on today, but yet they're always kicking Black people off the platforms.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't see the irony of that?
Well, y'all do the work. We'll take the credit and we'll take the cash. I mean, that's been the system for over 400 years.
Yeah, it's definitely time for a new system.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that it's not going to come by anyone just being altruistic to say, we've really done wrong the last 400 years. And, we should think about um, repair. We should think about the things that we have stolen, things that we
Mm-hmm.
have confiscated, things that
Mm-hmm.
we have destroyed to the point where it can't be built back. And so something
Mm-hmm.
has to be built in its place.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should, I don't know, spend part of our national defense budget on righting some of the wrongs that we've done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because if we realistic, that is also a part of national defense. I mean, I'm just saying, militarily,
Mm-hmm.
that's also a part of national defense. Taking care of your citizens
Yes.
so that your citizens will not defect to the other nations when they do come.
Mm-hmm.
Because what would happen if 42 million black people defected to the other side should we be invaded?
This country will crash.
I mean, I don't think they're thinking in the future. I just don't think they are.
Well, there wouldn't even be such thing as an economy at that point.
I mean,
Not in this country.
I mean,
Some other country would be saying, "Oh, y'all come on, we'll pay y'all because y'all gonna spend." So
But
y'all
again,
come right on over here.
But again, isn't that what Britain did? When Britain came to fight the U.S., they promised the people who defected to their side freedom and other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them stayed on that side and never came back, and they went back to Britain.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like it hasn't happened in history. I just think that the United States, for some reason, thinks that they've kind of like got it in the bag, so to speak. And to me, there's a real neglect of their black citizenry overall. And
Well,
so
see, that's something.
again, to me, that's a part of to me it would seem like it would be a national defense concern. Like we have we have citizens that would defect to the other side if given the opportunity for repair, because we haven't been repairing our own citizens, and other nations know that, i.e., Russia.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Exactly. I was going to go there. Russia. See,
Russian Vladimir Putin brings it up every time the United States has something to say about him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's already telling you, if I address anybody in your country, I'm going to address the people that you have neglected.
Mm-hmm.
He's telling them.
Mm-hmm. But this is the thing. Their brains are too dense to, like, or either that or they're probably saying, "Oh, they ain't going nowhere. We've been too bad to them. They ain't going nowhere." Or maybe they think they've really been good to us after 400 years of oppressing us and treating us like trash. Maybe they really think that. Listen, I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Seriously, I really wouldn't be surprised if they do, because some of the stuff that I hear some of them saying is like, what planet are you on?
I mean,
really, what planet are you on?
All I'm saying is there are black people who would say, because I was born here, my family's here, I am an American as much as anyone else, right? I'm a part of this nation. We built this thing. And then there are other black Americans that would say, yeah, we built it, but we're not getting any benefit out of it.
Right.
So tell me, why should I defend it? Mm-hmm. That's the scenario that our country has created through centuries of neglect.
Now,
So when
even I'm
you
gonna tell
so
you
when you
this.
say things like black people aren't patriotic enough, we know that the first black man died for the country, Crispus Attucks.
Yes,
But when you say stuff like that, the other side of that is, why would they be as patriotic? Why would they be patriotic if they're looking at all of the ways that you have stolen legacy and left them with nothing
but
and
here's the
left them
thing.
with no stake in being
Here's
loyal
here's
to this country?
here's the thing. We are patriotic in spite of.
Yes, we are. Many of us are.
And they're not
I
getting
would
it.
say about 98% of us are.
Yeah, and they're not getting it. We're patriotic in spite of, not because of, but in spite of. As again, I always use this quote, Doc Rivers. We keep loving America, but America won't love us back.
Yeah.
So
And
eventually the day may come. The day may come when, because listen, I keep telling people, Russia ain't too far from invading this country. Oh, nobody's going to come here. Nobody's going to invade this country. Right now, looks like Russia and China if they decide to join forces and come.
I mean, let's just say you can't live and build your society like Rome and Greece, who were also conquered.
Mm-hmm.
We're literally we have built our society very much like Rome and Greece, and our society has devolved the way Rome and Greece devolved because they became so caught up in their appetite, their fleshly appetite,
Mm-hmm.
that is a part of what weakened them as a nation. They were so involved in the worship of self. They were
Mm-hmm.
so involved in their sexual appetite to the exclusion of like really paying attention to the fact that they were deteriorating as a society as a whole. And so we can't look at history and think that we won't ever be brought under another nation's power. Because if we look at history, right, you had the strongest nations eventually fell to someone else. And we don't even have half the wisdom of the ancient civilizations. We don't have half of the discipline of the ancient civilizations. We just don't. We are a younger country that is very, how can I say it, prideful.
Yeah.
We're a younger country. We've been around longer than most other countries. And on top of that, we're very prideful.
Mm-hmm.
Because we think that our military and army power and all of that is going to be able to stop certain things from happening. Now, short of, blowing up the entire world to save our country, which I hope nobody ever tries to do that, we are outmanned by other countries.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that in itself is a whole problem.
Mm-hmm.
If they invaded us by ground, it's a done deal.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you have some drones, but like I said, short of blowing up nearly all the parts of the world to defeat them,
Mm-hmm.
we would have a problem on our hands. I mean, I know Americans are pretty cocky. but
Yes.
we would have
True
a
or
problem
false?
on our hands, which
Mm-hmm.
is why there is so much emphasis on not letting them come to ground here. There's so much emphasis on beating it back. There's so much emphasis on taking the war to them
Mm-hmm.
and not to us,
Mm-hmm.
because we would have a problem. We really would. Final thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
Pastor Ben, as I'm going to wrap it up a little early here tonight. Final thoughts.
Well, we as a nation need to get it together. But first, we as a nation, the colorful nation, the black and brown nation, we need to come together. See, we need to come together for us, do us, and let them do what they do.
I will say this.
Defend us.
I wasn't going to get into
Yeah.
it. I'm still not going to get into it. I'm just going to say what I got to say.
Mm-hmm.
While the world news is happening and people are, and the world is looking at this whole thing with Russia and Ukraine and the United States, and how much pressure is going to come to bear on Russia to get them to leave the Ukraine alone and all that. As you said, we need to come together. We don't need to come together around which black men are releasing their sex tapes online. I wake up, and this is the conversation our community is having. Like, really? For real? Really? I'm like, did I miss something? Was that supposed to be my business?
There's a whole lot more important things going on.
And so again, I keep saying, if this is the hot topic in the news floating for the day, what all is happening behind that news that they don't want you to pay attention to?
Mm-hmm.
It's like someone said, well, can't we focus on both things? I'm like, no, because one is irrelevant. I'm not trying to be funny, but one is irrelevant to the future of your country, possibly engaging in another pointless war and sending thousands of people into a war that they shouldn't be going into.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is somebody's personal business got leaked online. They apparently, I don't know, some of them apologize, I don't know. But the women that's involved, they need to file lawsuits, and that's that. It shouldn't be days in the news cycle. That's what I'm saying. It shouldn't be days in the news cycle, because what's happening is, as that news gets pushed up, important news about the future of your country possibly entering into another war gets pushed down. Because it's all about algorithms, as we know.
Yes.
So we have to be a little bit more smarter in this hour about what we're allowing ourselves to get drawn into and carried away with.
Yes. I would like to give a shout out to one of my babies on it. That's my daughter-in-law, Mary's Lockett, doing me.
All right.
My daughter.
Welcome. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in.
Mm-hmm.
Closing thoughts.
As I said, we need to come together. Not as you just explained, but as a people, and build something. When I say build something, I'm not talking about physical buildings.
Yeah.
Even though, yes, we could do that. We need to build something as a group. Like you said, everybody ain't gonna join, but we can get about 80%. If we can get 80%, we can do something.
Yeah.
We can do something. Support. If 80% support us, we got our own thing going at that point. See, and they have to pay attention. They have to understand. We're losing all that money. Yeah, Apparently, you don't want it because you don't want us. So,
Now they say it's roughly
yeah.
42 million black people in the United States. If 80% of us stood up, that would be about 33.6 million of us. I think that's doable. 33 million.
Yeah.
I think that's doable. It's a great number too. 33 million.
But listen, 33 million, just imagine $1 a million.
Yep.
I mean, whew.
33 million standing up for what is right and good and growth oriented for our communities. 33 million people.
33 million people.
Saying, let's come together. Let's move as a unit. MLK warned about that. He warned that if black people did not learn how to move as a unit, we were going to get lost in the political gumbo. And that's what's happened.
Exactly.
That is actually what happened. He writes about it, in case you want to know the book, he writes about it in Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? That book is literally a blueprint for what black people should have been doing and should be doing now. He left a blueprint. So when people say his work was unfinished, it was unfinished, but he left a finished blueprint. And as I started reading it many years ago, I said, man, if we just follow the blueprint he left behind, we would be in a better place as a people. But the people who were supposed to carry his torch start lighting their own torches. Whole other sermon. Whole other sermon. And so the blueprint was left.
We won't call any names.
The blueprint was left undone. But the blueprint is still there. Some of the same key ideas that he pointed out have still not been executed to the fullest extent of possibility. So this has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host tonight, Shantae Charles. I want to thank you all for your time and attention. If you felt that this broadcast was helpful, feel free to share it to your friends list. We're also on YouTube at Church Love 333. This broadcast will also be up there. And also it's on our podcast, anchor.fm/Daring Dialogues. Please take an opportunity to share this broadcast out to your fellow spheres of influence. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So continue to go out and be what, Pastor Ben?
Light.
Be light. Take care, everyone, and have a great night.